once was a ship that went to sea. The name of the ship was Tress in the Emerald Sea. Everyone, the year of Sanderson is upon us. The first of the secret projects has been released, and the title is Tress of the Emerald Sea. As some of you may know, I was a dirty cheater and read the preview chapters of these books as they were released, and this book was one of my most anticipated books of the year and one of my most anticipated books of the secret projects. And the reason for that was because Tress of the Emerald Sea had so much promise to be something very different than your traditional Cosmere novel. Sanderson has openly stated that one of his inspirations for writing this book was the book The Princess Bride, which was a known classic which was made into an adaptation that became even more of a known classic.
You keep using the word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
Oftentimes, comparing your work of art to one that is already well known in society is a dangerous move because it sets the expectations very high from jump.
Ha, you fool! You fell victim to one of the classic blunders.
And that knowledge, as well as reading the preview chapters, which were the first 5 chapters of this book before it was released, it set my bar through the roof. But I am not kidding when I say that this book exceeded my expectations in every way, as high as they were already. The most precise word I could use to describe my feelings reading any part of this book was, it is just absolutely delightful. From start to finish, Tress's journey is one of a much more whimsical nature than we've ever experienced in the Cosmere up to this point. The setting is that Hoid, a well-known character throughout the Cosmere, is telling a story to other characters within the Cosmere. So the entire book is told from his perspective as a narrator with his particular penchant for storytelling acumen. And I genuinely credit Brandon Sanderson's ability to write from the perspective of Hoid as one of the most important draws of this book for me. While the book is clearly written by the same author and has many of Brandon Sanderson's hallmark key strengths, on top of that, we actually get to see him explore a different side of prose than he normally tackles with his regular series. And this is where you get me praising something that most people criticize Brandon Sanderson for, and that's his prose. The way that he, through his character in the story, tells this story is absolutely beautiful. It's a combination of Hoid's witty humor, the ability to use whimsy to tell a story as a storyteller to keep an audience gripped, that's constantly being flourished with Hoid's personal interjections into the story with of course fourth wall style breaking elements similar to the way that Hoid has told stories to characters in the Stormlight Archive, for instance. But just as poignant is Sanderson's ability through Hoid to use the voice of narration to actually add so much to the story. But one of the most profound aspects of the book is Sanderson, through Hoid's voice, having the opportunity to interject commentary into a story that simultaneously tells an entertaining story to the reader while actually making some really profound observations about life in the real world. But because well-known Cosmere readers are already familiar with Hoid's style, it doesn't feel out of place. It just feels like he added something amazing to his own storytelling style. Within this whimsical fairy tale, and it is much lighter than Sanderson's other novel, we also get actual poignant messages, and the comparison that I made to Amanda was, this almost feels like Brandon Sanderson added a little bit of Frederick Bachman to his Cosmere novel. Many of the moments where Hoid gets a chance to actually use some exposition to give his thoughts or point out something important to the reader are actually super deep and heartfelt and spoke to me in a way I was not expecting. This book is beautiful. And all of this is done in the same story where there are still poop jokes and some like actual scathing criticisms of society and fashion. There's so much contained in this small package. And on top of that, the warm, lighter tone that this book has, its whimsical fairy tale nature, actually in many ways makes Tress of the Emerald Sea feel almost more magical than many of Sanderson's epic fantasy worlds. Magical in the like classical sense. It evoked the feeling in me that I got when I first read fantasy as a child, and everything seemed possible, and the world seemed magical the way that it was built. It was so foreign, but so interesting, and this lighter tone really brought me back to why I loved fantasy originally. It was an escape from the mundane, boring world that we live in, an opportunity to go through a portal to magical lands that we could only visit in our imagination, but our imagination contained within it the power to create these worlds. And it's within this context that we're able to see through the eyes of a young person the vastness of the unknown world that lies before us while discovering more about other people and ourselves at the same time. At no point did I ever want to put this book down. And then to top it all off, the icing on the cake was that this was a book told from Hoyt's perspective, so of course we're getting Cosmere mentions left and right. But unlike the Cosmere references in The Lost Metal, where they're super front and center and almost part of the integral plot, the Cosmere connections in this book are super cool if you care about that sort of thing. But this is also the type of standalone book that if you don't understand that sort of thing, they just add to the mystery and the wonder of it all when you realize everything is just so much bigger than it initially seems, like when you're looking at the world from the eyes of a child. Now, when I say that this book is whimsical, I don't mean to say that it has a soft magic system. The magic in the world of Tress is very much still a hard magic system with very defined rules that are scientifically explained, but not as obnoxiously as Sanderson sometimes does in other novels. Instead, for the most part, I feel like the incorporation of the explanation of the magic in the world felt much more at place in the way that he puts it in this novel than it could in Mistborn, for instance, where Sanderson is constantly giving you math and science lessons on the way that metals work. The discovery of the magic system by characters in this story feels much more organic. And as you read the book, I guess that could be seen as a pun. I didn't mean it as such. And let me tell you, intent matters. That was a Cosmere joke. Because of this change in tone and the more lighthearted nature of the story, I do think that there are going to be detractors that don't enjoy this book as much as I did. While Sanderson never really goes grimdark, he typically deals with heavy themes frequently in his books, and he often likes to put the epic in epic fantasy. This definitely doesn't have either of those vibes. This book has an overall tone of hopefulness. I keep using the word whimsy, and it really plays with elements of literary fiction with the way that it tries to explore elements of humanity and society and culture. And I think that will probably turn some off, along with its lighthearted nature being seen maybe as immature. I've seen people refer to this book as a YA feeling book, and I can understand the sentiment, but it's not the presence of darkness that makes a book mature. To me, the most quotable moments of this book, the explorations of humanity and culture, the real theming that happens behind the scenes of this book actually makes it hit way harder than it has any right to be if you just separate out the story and take that alone. Not only is Sanderson batting above his normal weight class with this particular book, I think he's actually made a multi-layered book that can be appreciated from lots of different angles. My experience with this book couldn't help but be compared to the first time I read The Voyage of the Dawn Treader by C.S. Lewis. It's also a nautical fantasy where they're journeying from place to place, exploring different levels of magic in each location. And while this book clearly isn't aiming for Christian allegory, I feel like it is a book that thematically reaches beyond just telling a story and actually tries to make the world a better place. That sounds corny, but it's good. There's good quotes in the book. And the mastery of the real magic system of fantasy, not the magic system contained within the book, but the magic system of being able to allow you to put your guard down to consider other perspectives, other lines of thinking, and allow your imagination to run wild while also potentially learning important lessons or having core things reiterated. I love Tress of the Emerald Sea. The Cosmere is my favorite series, and Tress has easily become one of my favorite books within the Cosmere. I'm hoping that there are people who just due to hype chose to take part in the Brandon Sanderson Kickstarter, or because of the hype of this first drop, choose to pick up Tress of the Emerald Sea for the first time, and this is their first experience in the Cosmere, because I think it's a wonderful one. And I realize that I'm not being a Sanderson Cosmere purist when I say that you could definitely start here, but I do believe that if you start reading the Cosmere with this book, if this is your first Sanderson book, you might get a great example in a shorter, more digestible form of some of the things that Sanderson is able to do best with his fantasy novels. And this could be seen as a positive or a negative. You actually might get to see Sanderson do some of his best work here that won't be replicated in his previous books. I realize everything that I'm saying here is high praise, and I know that people are going to disagree with me. I've watched many reviews for this book already, and not everyone is as high on this book as I am, but I'm being completely genuine. It has been a very long time, even with reviewing books on this channel, talking about books on this channel, that I have wanted to so desperately immediately gush about this book with other people. I wanted to make a video so bad when I finished it yesterday. I've been so frustrated with my friends who aren't done with it or haven't started it yet because I just adore it so much that I need to talk about it with other people, and I genuinely hope that other people can find the beauty in it that I do. To those who haven't read this book but what I've described sounds interesting to you, I highly recommend it. To those of you that have already read this book, what do you think about my thoughts? Am I crazy? Am I off base? Did you vibe with the same things that I vibed with? Please let me know in the comments down below. If you like this review, please give it a thumbs up. There's a channel on the Discord specifically to discuss this book if you want to join that. The link is also below. And if you'd like to hear my thoughts on the rest of the Brandon Sanderson Secret Projects books, or just my thoughts on other books in general, please consider subscribing to the channel. I'd really appreciate it. Heck, you can even share the video with someone that you want to get into the Cosmere. Maybe this could be that nugget, kernel, seed. Thank you very much for watching. I love you all. Goodbye.
Take that look from off your face.